For those folks online, I'm sorry, we didn't unmute. So we brought the meeting to order, and all the counselors are here. And I'm making some comments about the public comment, how that's going to operate. So for general comment, let's please keep those comments to items on the process only. If you have concerns about the proposed changes later in the agenda, there'll be an opportunity to make comments either in favor, opposed, or in general. So please hold those comments to later on in the hearing. As you, for those in the room, if they'd come up to the dais and state your name and city of residence so we can get it on the recording. If you stand up in the audience, a lot of times it gets missed by this microphone here. Each citizen will be given 3 minutes to comment, and there'll be no donation of minutes between citizens. So you get your 3 minutes, and you don't get any more. So with that, the order of procedure for request number 1, public hearing. This is the 25 CP001 Part 1, request number 1 for Oak Ridge City Council to amend the City of Oak Ridge comprehensive plan. First item is the call for abstentions. Does any, please? Did I? Yes, I'm sorry. I blew right through that. Are there any public comments in general, not related to a specific agenda item or a proposed change, either online or in the room?
I know the food is going to taste great, but
I'm sorry, say that again. Okay, if there's anyone online that would like to make a comment, please raise your hand or unmute and identify yourself. In the room for a general comment on process. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Again, this is the order of procedure for the public hearing, 25 CP001 Part 1, request number 1 for the Oak Ridge City Council to amend the City of Oak Ridge comprehensive plan. The first is the call for abstentions. Does any member of the City Council wish to declare an ex parte contact or feel they have a conflict of interest, bias, or other reason to be disqualified from participation in this hearing? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to challenge any of the counselors' qualifications to participate in this hearing or online? Okay. Second item is to open the public hearing. This public hearing is conducted by the Oak Ridge City Council, is now open on March 20th, 2025 at 7:04 p.m. in the Oak Ridge City Hall. This hearing is conducted as a legislative hearing in accordance with the City of Oak Ridge Ordinance 874, Article 32, Section 3205, City Council legislation. The City Council may do any of the following: require the proponent to identify the provisions of the comprehensive plan that govern the decision and prepare findings describing how the proposal complies or fails to comply with these plan provisions. 2, review the nature of the proposal and describe whether the proposal warrants processing as a legislative matter. 3rd option, prepare a recommendation and make findings in support of such recommendations. This hearing is on an amendment to the City of Oak Ridge Comprehensive Plan to amend text for medium density residential and to add text for high density residential. The City Council at this public hearing may approve, modify, deny the request, or continue the meeting to a later date. A copy of the minutes of this hearing will be available in city offices along with the rules and procedures I am reading as part of this file. Item 3 is procedure. The public hearing is your only opportunity to submit factual information or raise issues concerning the requested based on applicable criteria listed. Failure to raise an issue at this hearing in person or by letter, or failure to provide sufficient specificity as to the criteria in order to afford the decision maker an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the State of Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. If the decision is appealed, only those issues raised by testimony or letter at the original hearing may be raised in any state or local appeal, local or state appeal of the initial decision. A, the initial decision, the issue that may be the basis for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised no later than the close of the record or at the following the final evidentiary hearing on this application. Such issue shall be raised with and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford this body an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. When those individuals wishing to register evidence or comments can testify, then those individuals wishing to register evidence or comments can testify. During the hearing of the City Council, the City Councilors may ask questions of the staff members or others who provided testimony. When the need for public discussion ends, the City Council closes the public hearing for its deliberation. No public testimony is permitted during this time unless the City Council reopens the public hearing. If you have documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by the City Council, they must be formally placed in the record of proceeding. To do that, either before or after you speak, please hand the materials to the staff. Those that will be testifying must provide their name and full mailing address if they wish to receive a notice of decision, be notified of a continuance, appeal, or other action on the application. Item 4 is the staff report. We are now ready for the staff report. Rick?
Okay. So this, the first part of this is just going to be the background on all requests, because it's relevant to all 4 of the requests. The Oak Ridge Code Evaluation and Update Project is to recommend code amendments related to urban design and housing, green infrastructure, transportation policies, and development requirements to help the city remove barriers and create a vibrant multimodal community. This project is partially funded by the Transportation Growth Management Program, joint program with Oregon Department of Transportation and Oregon Department of Lands Conservation and Development. The overarching goal is consistent with the mission, goals, and objectives of the TGM program and the SMART growth, also known as SMART development principles. A lot of what we are basing this on is the 2023 housing needs analysis. In the 2023, the city completed a housing needs analysis, a study that the city's existing and future housing needs. The HNA is used to determine if the city has enough land zones for housing to meet projected needs for the next 20 years. From the HNA, it was found the city does have sufficient land for building houses in the city and has a substantial surplus of land zoned single-family detached housing. There is capacity for approximately 1,100 new single-family detached housing under the current zoning regulations, but there's only a projected need for about 200 houses over the next 20 years. These differences really highlight the overwhelmingness of single-family housing that we have. And I would like to talk about the HNA. It is required from OAR 66-024-005. That the city is required to plan for the next 20 years to meet sufficient needs of its community. And this is also required through the analysis of an HNA, housing needs analysis. There has been a lot of discussion about the correctness and applicability of this housing needs analysis that I feel is worthy of discussing as well. We've had individuals who are questioning it, and all I have to say is from the methods being used for differentiating numbers is the public citizen used the exponential growth formula to come up with those numbers, which is where the final population over time, the initialization population, annual growth rates, and time in years. The HNA numbers that we get come from Portland State University, and Portland State University is mandated by the state of Oregon to produce these numbers for counties and cities and the entire state. And then we are in turn required to use those numbers. Now, their data sources and their methodology is completely different. And I think it's worth noting that the methodology used to come to these two different numbers is important, because as where the exponential growth formula will give you a much different number than what is called the cohort component method. It's had much more information put into it. For example, its data sources are administrative data such as birth and death records, school enrollment, employment, driver's license information, state and federal income tax exemptions, Medicare enrollment, survey data from collaboration with cities and counties to gather such data. I do have to reply to Portland State University every year on how many houses we build. And then of course, US Census data is used for these models as well. Now, the cohort component method is a method that simulates other demographic components as well, such as fertility, migration, mortality rates, natural difference in birth and death is also used in this population growth analysis, and those that are migrating in and out of the community. So I feel that it is very important that we acknowledge that the methodology of these two different numbers is derived from the methodology used to create these numbers. Portland State University is much more in depth, much more information going into it than a exponential growth formula. With that being said, from my time and experience with the city, Portland State University has never hit the mark on correct population growth for Oak Ridge. I don't fault Portland State University for the numbers being incorrect, and I think that highlights an issue with there's something in Oak Ridge that is keeping it from growing at the same rate as the rest of the state of Oregon. And I think that is where the differences lie, is Oak Ridge is not growing, the rest of the state is. Why is it not growing is a whole nother conundrum. But I don't think it's a fair stretch. Housing could be part of that. So moving on, well, actually the key points are, we have to use Portland State's numbers. Cascadia Partners use Portland State numbers. Admittedly, there is a graph in the document that looks like there is an incorrect number. So just for me to say that Cascadia Partners is 100% correct, I can't do that. There are errors in it, but we should not throw the baby out with the bathwater in these regards. So I know that was an issue that has come about a lot in the planning commission meetings. We might hear it again today. I just wanted to address that. So moving on, we had after the housing needs analysis, we had the TGM code evaluation update phase 1, which was centered on how to change the uptown to make it more vibrant. What barriers were there in place that prohibited smart development within the city. We evaluate things such as housing affordability, use and design standards in the zoning to include permitting middle housing types. We evaluate barriers to redevelopment, new development in the community, development standards that may include development, including design requirements, inefficient or unnecessary complicated requirements in land use permitting process. We evaluate multimodal opportunities, opportunities to encourage green infrastructure elements, including street trees, to enhance pedestrian travel and livability. Evaluated and updated off-street parking requirements to ensure the land is use is efficient and maximizes opportunity in the old town or the uptown. And requires flexibility for developers to build affordable housing options. Evaluate policies to direct it to support desired land use. And code modifications from the recent transportation system plan that have not yet been codified into our current zoning. This was phase one of this project. Develop an action plan to provide a specific direction for the community and its city leaders, and his action plan is part of your packet. And is part of your packet, and sorry. It also recommends that we combine our land division ordinance 805 with our zoning ordinance to create a unified development ordinance, which is much easier to understand, clear and objective standards for the developers. Then the third large piece of this was a TGM code evaluation update project phase 2. One of my most appreciated things about phase 2 of the project was we were handed an HNA. This clearly said you are deficient. We as a community may not adopt a efficient housing needs analysis. We have to fix the housing needs analysis, fix its deficiency before we can adopt it. TGM code evaluation phase 2 picked up from there with the housing needs analysis, picked up with the TGM code phase 1, combine them, and then we move forward. The current phase of, I shouldn't say current because it has ended. Current phase of 2 of TGM code project is and was to evaluate and amend the zoning ordinance, land division ordinance, and comprehensive plan to implement key recommendations of the housing needs analysis and the phase 1 action plan. This project identified proposed code amendments that would bring the city and the code into compliance with recent state legislation regarding housing development. Phase 2 explored the codification of a number of city ordinances enacted after the adoption of the current city Oak Ridge zoning ordinance of 2004. The inclusion of the land use ordinance and creating updated unified development. Now, throughout all 3 of these processes, we had citizen involvement and outreach. Throughout all aspects of the aforementioned projects, pardon me, there have been opportunities for citizen involvement. So in the H&A process, we had an online survey, community outreach, planning commission work sessions, joint planning commission and city council work sessions and meetings, a second community open house, adoption hearings where we were not able to adopt, and TGM phase 1 and 2, we've had planning commission work session 1, stakeholder interviews, community meetings. Number 1, virtual public workshop from December 2nd through December 10th. Planning commission TGM code evaluation work session. Number 1 in January 2023. City council and planning commission work session. TGM phase 1 code analysis. Planning commission work session for mapping for increased density. City council planning commission joint work session in June of 24. Virtual public workshop number 2 from July 22 to August 19th of 2024. Community meeting number 2, December 9th, 2024, and planning commission work session January 7th of 2025. And added that list, we've had 2 planning commission meetings and 1 planning commission work session. So that brings a total of 21 opportunities for public input. And anything we do here is we are required for statewide noticing and goals. So Oregon statewide planning goals. There's 19 planning goals for the state that the state of Oregon has established. Most of them were established in 1975. And the goals express the state's policy on land use and related topics such as citizen involvement, housing, natural resources, and actions taken for long-range planning must comply with the applicable state planning goals and are reviewed by the Department of Land Conservation and Development, also known as DLCE, before receiving concurrence from the state and newly adopted comprehensive plans and land use defining ordinances shall receive concurrence from the state. I'm gonna go into some of those goals and how they affect how these projects tie into those goals. Goal number one is citizen involvement. This goal requires the cities develop a citizen involvement program that ensures the opportunity for citizens to be involved in all phases of the planning process. These proposals do not recommend any changes to the citizen involvement policies found in the City of Oak Ridge Comprehensive Plan, which states we will continue to utilize citizen advisory committees and public town hall meeting processes as vehicle citizen involvement in public meeting process. Nor does it propose any changes outside of the numbering of articles found in the City of Oak Ridge zoning. In Article 31, the code analysis portion leading to and informing the current proposed comprehensive plan map, land use ordinance zone change closely followed OAR 660-015000 subsection 4, the goal of citizen involvement guidelines. The affirmation citizen involvement outreach did occur in the following: citizen involvement, communication, citizen influence, and technical information was part of the process through media, mailings, postings, and opportunities for input at public meetings. Citizen involvement through the public hearing process is outlined and then followed as prescribed in the City of Oak Ridge zoning ordinance. Article 31 will continue throughout the process of throughout the public hearing process. We have a feedback mechanism that is provided through an active project advisory and leading to the proposed changes that we have today. And continues through the public hearing and public opportunity for testimony through letters, emails, and in person at the hearing. These processes. The feedback mechanism was provided at the onset of the project through meeting input opportunities, online virtual public workshops will continue through the public hearing process. So land use goal number 2 is to establish a land use planning process and policy framework as a basis for all decisions and actions related to use of land and to assure an adequate factual base for such decisions and actions. Preparations of the plans and implementation measures receive sufficient time for the collection of factual information through the housing analysis, the code review process, and evaluation of factual data was refined, and alternative solutions and strategies were evaluated through multiple public meetings, analysis, and feedback was given. Planning goal number 10 is to provide for the housing needs of citizens of the state. As part of the housing needs analysis, buildable land for residential uses have been inventoried. The current the current proposal encourages the availability of adequate numbers of needed housing units, the removal of housing barriers, along with considerations derived from smart development principles. Smart development principles were used during this process are intended to provide housing options and promote all price range and rent levels by reducing the need for added city infrastructure by requiring locations that currently have water, wastewater sufficient to provide for those needs. These principles will also take into consideration proximity to school services, schools, parks, public transportation routes. And new legislative mandates for housing have been incorporated into the code review and update process. That the list of the criteria that we're using for the mapping is in more detail in request number 2. And another note worth noting about smart development principles, they do benefit the city in means of our return of investment on our infrastructures and other people who invest in our communities through developing and putting infrastructure. The best way to put it is we have a miles worth of water line that we've invested or somebody else has invested, and we have 2 users on that line compared to 20 users on that line. The return of investment is significantly different. And that is one of the part of the matters for us, for myself, being part of public works as well, is the return of investment of our infrastructure. Goal number 2, transportation. The goal is to provide and encourage safe, convenient, and economic transportation systems. The current proposal incorporates and codifies applicable policies found in the 2020 City of Oak Ridge Transportation System Plan to encourage safe, convenient transportation for multiple modes of transportation. On January, for the required notices, on January 15th, 2025, city staff notified the LCD of the proposed comprehensive plan and zoning changes as required by submitting PAPA Form 1. And for the zoning regulations, cities are required to mail out letters to all affected parties in order to comply with Oregon Measure 56, 1998. Staff sent 1,457 letters to all property owners within the urban growth boundary, notifying them of the public hearing times, dates, and where to find more information. After mailing out 1,400 some change letters, we did receive about 100 back because they were not deliverable. And as communicated in previous city council meetings, the method required by the state and that we use for mailing those letters out is they go to property owners and they go to whatever address is on the tax rolls for that parcel. And if those are not updated in a timely manner, they get sent back to us. And at this time, my staff report will now go, what I mentioned before is pretty much trying to cover the whole project, right? So now I'm gonna go into be a little more specific in request number 1. And as mentioned, request number 1 is for city council to amend the city of Oak Ridge comprehensive plan. Consideration for comprehensive plan amendments due to the antiquated and due to the old nature of the existing document, which is our current comprehensive plan. Adopt a comprehensive plan does not include background information related to recent long-range planning projects. Specifically, current text is not completely accurate and supportive of Oak Ridge housing development goals. The following documents provide an updated framework and rationale for adding the existing comprehensive text to the comprehensive plan policies. And Appendix A in the document is the code evaluation update phase 1 action plan, and this action plan recommended policies for code changes to address the unique housing development needs of Oak Ridge. The amendments proposed in the current phase of this project implemented those recommended actions. The Oak Ridge housing needs analysis is attached in Appendix B. This code amendments and comprehensive plan additions implemented the housing strategies recommended by the HNA in 2023. Oregon House Bill 3197 attached in Appendix C, state legislation requires local governments to provide clear and objective standards for development of all housing types. Proposed policy and amendment echoes this commitment to follow these requirements and provide for the basis of proposed local code amendments. So section number 2, so comprehensive plan designation. To support the proposed creation of a R3 zone or a high density residential in a comprehensive plan designation described will be added to the comprehensive plan to correspond to the residential potential high density areas on the updated comprehensive plan map. Areas designated potential high density will allow for the addition of housing and a greater variety of housing types in more areas of Oak Ridge. Currently, residential areas of Oak Ridge have a gross density of 4 to 5 units per acre. And the following text, the heart of the proposal, the heart of what we're here for today, the following text should be added to the adopted comprehensive plan. High density. The areas of the comprehensive plan map designated as residential potential high density are areas the Oak Ridge considers suitable for high density housing, including multifamily residential and where the infrastructure capacity to accommodate such development exists. High density residential means a gross density of 20 dwelling units per acre. Additionally, the existing definition of medium density residential comprehensive plan designation should be removed in its entirety and replaced with an updated description that better reflects the community's housing needs as documented in the HNA. This proposed text modification will support and is consistent with some map changes to the residential designation from R1. The following text is to replace the existing text for medium density residential found in the comprehensive plan. Medium density residential, the areas of the comprehensive plan map designated Medium density residential, the areas of the comprehensive plan map designated as residential potential medium density are suitable for a range of housing types, including duplex, triplex, and townhouses. Medium density housing means a gross density of up to 16 units per acre. Comprehensive plan amendment approval criteria and process. So ordinance 550 is an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan, section 3, comprehensive plan review, revisions and updates, outline steps needed to amend the plan. Section 3A states the preparation of plans, implementation measures, and plan revisions to an ongoing land use planning process will generally be based in the following broad phases. Phase number 1 is to identify development problems and issues. Phase number 2 will be to collect necessary factual information. Phase number 3 will be analyze information. Phase 4 is to prepare alternative development policy. Phase 5 is to identify and resolve any possible conflicts or plans with affected government units. Phase 6 is to recommend policy for adoption, and phase 7 is to evaluate these programs. As these phases apply to what we're doing here today, phase 1, problem with development of needed housing has been identified through the HNA and TGM efforts regarding long-range needed housing options. Both the HNA and TGM processes collected factual information on the availability of housing types and densities. Factual information regarding incomes, housing costs for existing types compared to median types, and limitations. In phase 3 of analyzing the information, both the HNA and TGM processes analyze the information collected through their respective processes. Phase 4, prepare alternate development policies. The HNA prepared and offered multiple options to meet the housing needs, types, and densities. Phase 5, identify and resolve possible conflicts. State mandates for more housing options are identified to be in conflict with a lack of available housing options found in our long-range planning options for needed housing types. Phase 6 of recommending policy for adoption. City staff is recommending the adoption of a high density option and amendments to the medium density option for adoption. Phase 7 is to evaluate the policy and program, evaluation of housing options, and the success of introducing and amending the comprehensive plan will be an ongoing process carried out by the Planning and Development Department of the state. I'm sorry, everybody, I will put reading here real soon. All right, so Planning Commission recommendations. On February 18th, the Shady Grove Ridge Planning Commission held a public hearing on local planning file 25-CP-001 request number 1. Where after taking staff reports, statements from public, and finding a fact, the commission voted 6-0 to recommend to the Oak Ridge City Council to amend the comprehensive plan to include the following text. High density residential. The areas of the comprehensive plan map designated as residential potential high density are areas of City of Oak Ridge considered suitable for high density housing, including multifamily residential, and where there is infrastructure and capacity to accommodate such development. High density. I'm sorry, I'm gonna start over. I don't want to mess this up. I lost my space. The recommendation from Planning Commission City Council to amend the comprehensive plan to include the following text. High density residential, the areas of comprehensive plan map designated as residential potential high density are the areas City of Oak Ridge considered suitable for high density housing, including multifamily residential, where there is infrastructure capacity to accommodate such development. High density residential means a gross density of up to 20 dwelling units per acre. And to amend the comprehensive plan to replace the existing text for medium density residential to be the areas on the comprehensive plan map designated as residential potential medium density are suitable for a range of housing types, including duplex, triplex, townhouses. Medium density housing means a gross density of up to 16 units per acre. And before I conclude, I would like to mention we do have a number of residential structures in our town that were built before, most of them before it was Oak Ridge. Most of these will be in Willamette City. We have a couple apartment complexes. We do have some in Oak Ridge off of, Vine Street, I believe it is. But we do have structures, we do have areas that are already built out to an R3 style of, the manufactured home parks, Ironwood Village, Mountain View Manor. When considering the possibility of R3, all of those structures that I mentioned before, all of those places are currently a non-conforming use, which is also known as a grandfather clause. Now, what that does is that puts even more barriers on those residential units. It severely limits their ability to expand, and it minorly limits their ability to improve and even make to make changes. So for those individuals, we have put, because they are non-conforming use, because they are zone R1, low density residential, for them to do anything, they have extra steps of going through planning commission. And while I do work on these maps, which we'll get to later on in the meeting, what I'm proposing to planning commission, which you'll hear later on, does place those in an R3. And the reason I mention this is because if we don't have an R3, we will continue to be putting barriers on some of the people that could benefit the most from less removing barriers. I also wanted to reiterate, in this definition of high density, it does say City of Oak Ridge considers suitable for high density housing, including multifamily residential with infrastructure capacities to accommodate such development. That's part of the mapping process as well. Identifying those places where the infrastructure is suitable for 20 dwelling units per acre. And those have been within conversations with our public works crew, our engineer of record. And that's one of the reasons we came to where we did on the mapping. I know we're not talking about the mapping now, but I'm just trying to find the tie to the R2 and R3 will tie into the next one. All of these requests build upon each other, and this one will build upon the next one.
Thank you, Rick. So now we'll just, I'll ask, are there any questions for the staff from council? There's a lot to digest, I know, and you've been looking at that packet for what, a month now, I think, but yeah. Please.
Just as an example, what are some of the challenges that these multifamily grandfather complexes have for renovation? You were talking about they can't expand, but they also are limited to some of their improvements. What would be an improvement that they wouldn't be able to do based on their R1?
Expanding their footprint.
Okay. But like-
Let's say they wanted to build out a new laundry facilities. That would require them to go to planning commission for conditional use permit. If they were in an R3, that would just require them to have a minor site plan review, which is staff review, which can be completed much quicker at zero cost compared to the cost of a visit to planning commission for conditional use permit. Now, this also intersects with the lack of clear and objective standards. If they have to go to planning commission, there's always a question in the back of their mind, will I meet this? Will I have this? And that severely hinders our ability to give them clear and objective standards. The standards are in the zoning, but it does make things more complicated severely compared to if they had to go just to fill out a building permit. They didn't have to fill out a land use application as well.
But it's not going to hinder their basic renovation if they wanted to redo their siding, their windows, their roofing, none of that would be affected by the current zoning the way it stands, even though they're duplexes, triplexes, or apartment complexes. Would any type of renovations within their footprint be affected by them not having the R2 or R3 rating in their zoning? It would. Yeah.
Please.
I have a question. I guess Ironwood Village, for example. I don't know how many apartments are there. It's like 30, 24. Okay. If that burns down, can they rebuild it, or would those 24 people be?
I I think it'd be conditional. That would be up to the planning commission to decide.
Okay.
Other questions? We got a few, Rick. So the noticing requirement was met for this meeting?
Yes, those requirements were met through the letters mailed out.
Okay. The H&A report that Cascadia did, they were hired by who? Whom?
To be honest, I was not here when that, I came on about, they were just wrapping it.
But it was by the state, wasn't it? They were hired by through the grant.
It was grant funded, and when that grant started, I was not employed. So I don't have details on that. Sorry.
So let me get it if I'm saying this correctly. So request number one, all it's doing is really having the city recognize the definition of middle and high density.
And add it to our requirement.
Right. And the source for those, that density 16 and 20, is it? That came from where?
That came from MIG, which is the second consultant.
Right.
For
And is that based on, is it just something they come up with internally, or is it based on some sort of a best practices? Okay. And then, so what we're doing with request number one doesn't change any zoning. It doesn't have any action other than to recognize it's a definition of what high and medium is. Okay.
But without it, it does hinder moving forward.
Sure. And then lastly, when was the last time the comp plan was revised? Approximately.
I want to say it was 550 was in, let's say, 89.
So it's been a while.
Yeah. It's been a while.
Okay. That's all I have. Any counselors have any other pop-ups? Okay, so at this point, we're on item 5, which is statements in favor. So we did get some written submissions. And so what I'm gonna do is read those first, and then following that, I'll reach out to the citizens to see if there are people that want to make statements in favor. So first, and I've ordered these alphabetically by last name. So first one is from Mr. John Davenport. And I know you're here, so I'll give you the option. I can read your statement, or you can read. Okay. All right. I will read it then. Okay. Again, this is from John W. Davenport, and he is from Oak Ridge. His statement is in favor. 1, rezone offers correction and consistency in several areas in Oak Ridge where current zoning and historic use patterns are inconsistent with current use and community needs. An example of this would be where lot parcels abut and or are adjacent, but have different zoning classification. This circumstance does not accommodate reasonable and practical lot line adjustments. I applied for a lot line adjustment in May 2022 at Tract B, Salmon Creek Estates Residential Subdivision, which is not being processed because of the adjustment would result in a mixed zoning for the Tract B parcel after the adjustment. Under the staff recommendation presented for this rezone initiative, the zoning for the 2 land parcels involved would be the same, which would result in no change for either parcel created by the lot line adjustment, except for the establishment of new property boundaries and lot sizes. This may help me get my lot line adjustment back on track. 2, multi-purpose zoning is appropriate areas of the city. Inappropriate areas of the city helps to bring in added markets for construction of multifamily dwellings. Comment 1, based on public comments heard at the March 18th Planning Commission work session, it may be wise to remove the area lying north of where West Oak Road and 3rd Street intersect from the urban growth boundary. The only enterprise beyond that point of intersection is the golf course. No stores, no service stations, no restaurants, etc. The residents are satisfied with the rural nature of their community, and the current zoning appears adequate well into the foreseeable future. The 6-inch water main in place along Rippling Way and Smolt Lane in Tract B, Salmon Creek Estate subdivision, along with 2 fire hydrants, does not appear to be on the working maps. There are also in place 8-inch sewer lines underground and connected to the Oak Ridge sewer lines along Roaring Rapids Way. A 12-inch pipe stormwater drainage system constructed for connection to the Phase 2 Salmon Creek Estates stormwater control system is in place. And that was Mr. Davenport's comment. Moving on to the next comment, and that is from Ms. Gwen DeJoya. And I'll ask her, is she online? Because I know she's not in the room. Okay, I'll read her comment. Again, she is Gwen DeJoya from Commercial Street in Oak Ridge. I'm writing to you in strong support of approving ordinance 948 and the Planning Commission's request number 1. City Council to amend the City of Oak Ridge Comprehensive Plan to include defined language around high-density residential housing as a gross density of 20 dwelling units per acre and a medium residential housing as a gross density of up to 16 dwelling units per acre. Additionally, I strongly support the Planning Commission's request to hold more work sessions and provide time for the Planning Commission to offer recommendations for request number 2, City of Council to amend the City of Oak Ridge plan map. These clarifications made in request number 1 and the potential updates may be recommended in request number 2 are imperative to provide adequate housing opportunities for all people who live, work, and play in Oak Ridge, Westford, and unincorporated Lane County. The current housing designations throughout Oak Ridge severely limit current and future potential residents in the entire area. People looking for housing at this time rely on word of mouth to find rentable homes and even purchasable properties. I've experienced the privilege of this system because the property I own on Commercial Street was brought to my attention and purchased in a private sale in 2020 after unsuccessfully trying to purchase a home in Oak Ridge's competitive middle housing market. In 2023, I found a different job that required me to move from Oak Ridge. I planned to advertise the house to rent after we moved. However, the renter found us 5 months before we ended up moving to an acquaintance of mine who had heard me frequently talk about Oak Ridge. This person was living in Southern Oregon, was hired by the Middle Fork Ranger District as a permanent wildland firefighter. They relayed the classic story about rentals in Oak Ridge. They are nearly impossible to find. This story is shared by people within the community as well. Many of the employees who work for the 2 largest employers, the Middle Fork Ranger District and the Oak Ridge High School, commute from the valley because they cannot find a home to live in. Everyone, including individuals, families, low income, the elderly, high school graduates, and large-scale employers, needs Oak Ridge to be able to provide affordable housing. This will build community economically and socially. The support for request number 1 and the increased time for the Planning Commission to provide recommendations on request number 2 is vital to Oak Ridge's development. These first votes on efforts at least 2 years in the making fulfill Oregon's statewide planning goals. Citizen involvement and public hearing ensures statewide planning goal number 1 is met, and this entire process supports goal 10 to provide housing for the needs of all citizens. Finally, this work ensures the City of Oak Ridge embodies its future vision. It states Oak Ridge is a safe, close-knit town nestled in the beautiful Cascade foothills, surrounded by trails where community isn't just a word, but a way of life. Increased housing opportunities provide the framework to build community. Council, I implore you all to support Oak Ridge's future potential and provide the opportunity for growth with your support of these requests. Thank you for your time and consideration. All right, next is from Ms. Joy Kingsbury, and I'll ask her if she's online because I know she's not in the room. Okay. I am Joy Kingsbury, 47726 Fairy Glen Drive, Oak Ridge. I've lived in Oak Ridge for 34 years and seen many changes. I've been involved in major remodels, building, real estate, and property management during my time here. I am now partially retired. I am in support of the comprehensive plan map. I have been involved in the housing industry in this area over the years in my residence. Oak Ridge has increased its population by few. The reason being that in this area, because of its attraction to the great outdoors and the year-round recreational activities, it is a magnet for early retirees. Early retirees in good health settle in this area, enjoy the scenic beauty of their new home, and settle in for about 20 years. They grow elderly, need the help of family and friends, and go into a retirement settlement or live near children and medical facilities, and their homes are purchased or rented to new early retirees, many from other states. I have witnessed this process many times over the years. As a consequence, Oak Ridge is experiencing a housing crunch for the now grown children of long-term citizens, their grandchildren, and extended family members. People who have lived here a lifetime are being crowded out of housing. They are forced to double up. We also have a growing cadre of young people who have many different lifestyles and different tastes who come to this area for many of the same reasons. They are an eclectic group with a need for mostly rental housing. Many are renting room and baths in private homes. Then came the boon for many homeowners with the advent of the Airbnb, where many homeowners turned to short-term rentals for added income This took many homes off the market for renting and selling. With the advent of ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units, small homes and multifamily dwellings, we will be able to accommodate some of these shortfalls. I do not foresee a tidal wave of development coming this way, a tidal wave of Section 8 housing, or a tidal wave of homeless and drug addicted. No tidal wave of any kind. I believe this plan will do much to alleviate our housing problems in a sensible fashion. Many of our citizens will elect to maintain status quo. Some will take advantage of room for expansion, and some will be hindered by lack of funds for the present, and it will be a slow build out. But give them the opportunity to use their properties to their betterment and to the betterment of the community, and to provide much needed housing for those without. Respectfully submitted. All right. Next is from Superintendent Dave McGrath. Are you online, sir? Okay. From Dave McGrath, Oak Ridge Superintendent. We support the effort to upzone parcels to allow for the higher density housing. As a primary recruiter for the Oak Ridge School District, I can verify that in recruiting teachers to work in our district, the lack of adequate housing options is a detriment to our efforts. This past school year, we hired 4 young teachers. Of those 4, only one was able to secure housing in Oak Ridge Westford area. As a result, after young teachers secure several years of teaching experience and make the commute from the Eugene Springfield area, they seek employment closer to home, and the cycle of hiring new teachers, training, and guiding them for several years, losing them to another district, the cycle repeats itself. Next is Ms. Marietta Thompson. Is she in the room or online? Ms. Thompson, do you want me to read this, or would you like to make the comment yourself? Looks like you're still on mute, so I will proceed reading it, and you can interrupt me if you aren't in agreement. All right. Again, from Ms. Marietta Thompson from Oak Ridge. I am strongly in favor of changing the zoning to be able to open up more housing and multi-unit low-income housing here in Oak Ridge. We are in desperate need of affordable housing here. I am aware of the need, the limited options, and the long waiting list. I am presently a volunteer at the food bank at the Methodist Church and the homeless program, as well as the warming center. I was also the local domestic violence advocate here for 14 years. Helping someone find affordable housing has always been difficult and has only worsened in my 20 years as a homeowner here in Oak Ridge. I heard the opposing views on the long Zoom public comment meeting. Their fears of having more low-income people moving here, having built an apartment complex built next to their homes in the hills, and ruining their pristine property and neighborhood are unrealistic and come from a privileged few. Not in my neighborhood, especially by the newer residents of Oak Ridge who recently bought or built new homes in the Hills neighborhood, are biased against the poor, elderly, and low-income residents. Their comments were appalling. It would not even make sense to build a large apartment complex where there would be no bus service and would not be approved without sufficient parking. It would also make sense to be able to have a second small home, mother-in-law garage conversion on some properties that have sufficient space. These rentals could supplement the income for some retired and low-income residents. Thank you for your time. I think this is the last one. This is from Ms. Bobby Whitney. Are you online, Bobby? I don't think so. Okay. Again, from Ms. Bobby Whitney, lives in Oak Ridge. The purpose of this letter is to express my personal opinions about the proposed comprehensive plan and zoning designation changes as they pertain to low income and low density housing. Please present this as a public comment for both the upcoming city council meeting and planning commission meeting. I have lived in the Oak Ridge area since 1972 and have had the opportunity to grow up here, raise my children here, work here, and watch how things have evolved and changed over the years. I've watched our trailer parks go from well cared for and groomed communities to what they are now. I've seen many open fields and vacant lots become single family homes and watch how many were sold and are now short-term rentals, AKA Airbnbs. I've lived in the areas that were low density housing that are now empty lots. I remember our community as having 2 lumber mills, a booming economy to where we are now. The changes have been immense, to say the least. I am in support of the zoning changes that will allow low density housing and more affordable housing. The city council has the final authority to create growth guardrails, so to speak, and help mold the way our community grows. Our updated zoning laws will allow for more sustainable housing opportunities and will help provide much needed stability for families. I see a need to make changes that will provide stable long-term housing, increase the disposable income of residents, stabilize housing for children and families, and spur other developments. I see other development being things like schools, healthcare facilities, small businesses, and economic growth. This is an opportunity to invest in having a healthier population and community. Sincerely. All right, that is all the written comments in favor. So at this point, I'll go first online to see if there are any comments in favor, citizens wishing to make comments in favor. Please either come off mute and state your name or raise your emoji hand. Nothing heard in the room. Is there a statement to be made in favor in the room? Ms. Hope.
Good evening, Sarah Altemus Pope. I live in unincorporated Lane County at this time, but the majority of my life I've lived in the city of Oak Ridge. I want to make a statement in favor for adopting the middle and high density residential for our comp plan. I also want to let you know I did serve on the most recent TGM2 committee. And I want to share with you that the committee, as they went through line by line, the recommendations that came down from DCLE, we asked, what does that mean on the ground? And went parcel by parcel, how many units does that mean? What would that look like? And these really are common sense recommendations that remove red tape. Red tape is what is prevented from development from happening in our community. And really my point of view in sitting on that committee was, what does economic development mean? If we make these changes, will that bring businesses to our community, allow our businesses to grow, and to have housing for our folks? So one of the things I want to share with you is 10 years on and off sitting on ODAC, and now I sit on the Collaborative Economic Development Organization board. I hear and I have heard over the years companies that look to come to Lane County and look to come to places like Oak Ridge and what they need. And what they need are 1, shovel-ready industrial lots to move into, or actual buildings being there. 2, transportation utilities. 3, housing for their employees that is already in place. And then last is workforce. And that's the order they ask questions. And in Oak Ridge, time and time again, housing is a barrier. And you hear it from our 2 biggest employers, Forest Service and the school district, that their employees can't get housing. And so that's going to limit us. It doesn't matter what we do in that industrial park. The company wants to come and their employees can't find housing, they're not coming. Or if they don't even have the option of building out housing for their employees, the density we need it, they're not coming. So I think that's something I want council to consider. A couple other things, increasing housing means increased tax base. We know we need that, right, for our community. And just because that designation is going to be increased, I mean, it doesn't mean just because we do this, it's all going to come at once. This is going to be a slow build out over time. And it does not prevent somebody from buying that high density R3 lot and still deciding to build one house. So it's just that opportunity and future development, future sales for that to happen. And then last, I did want to point out the conversation I've been hearing about some of these lots in Elk Meadows. That development has covenants on those deeds. The covenants of the deeds are stronger than what the city decides could be built there. So I do not foresee somebody coming in and buying one of those lots and breaking those covenants and developing higher, because they'll never be able to sell it. So, and while that's in place, I really think that's a non-issue. So maybe it needs to come off the maps, but for right now, that's the reality of that situation. So last, I just want to say, I hope you guys consider adding these to our comp plan so we can continue the discussion. I also think it's a great idea that we've opened the public comment for continued discussion on the mapping. And I do hope that people say, what does this mean in this lot, and have those conversations, because we really did line by line as a committee going through this process.
Thank you. All right, any more comments in the room in favor? Online, any more comments in favor? Rick, from your perspective, did I get all the written ones? Okay. Then if that's the case, we'll move on to statements in opposition. Before we get started, I know there's some that may have issues with individuals, but I ask you not to do personal attacks. Make it, you're concerned about the city staff, you're concerned about council, or you're concerned about the planning commission, but don't attack a person individually, please, if you have an issue. So with that, I'll ask in the room, are there any statements in opposition to request number 1? Please come forward and state your name and where you're from.
Anna Lamb, and the address is 48329 Commercial Street
Thank you.
in Oak Ridge. Okay. In 2019, Tina Kotek drafted a bill that became law, and that was the HB 2001. 3/4 of the land in Portland was zoned for single families, and this law changed it to medium density housing, allowing duplexes, townhomes, triplexes, and fourplexes. In all the cities with populations higher than 10,000 people, this has effectively eliminated single-family zoning. Currently, she is urging the legislature to pass HB 2138, which would bar cities and counties from blocking development of some types of middle-density housing. And it would provide incentives for developers to build Section 8 and ADA compliant facilities. Kotek claims to need 36,000 new homes per year to keep up with the demand, and this bill is declaring a state of emergency. Tiny homes for four small homes on a single lot are an option as well. This plan would include urban unincorporated lands. It will make retroactive prohibition on private restrictions, which is CCRs, including restrictions in government documents in planned communities that would limit medium density housing, ADUs, or housing density, and limits the local government's ability to reduce density requirements or allowances within urban growth boundaries. They can fast track all of this. Lastly, she is declaring a state of an emergency because of the homeless population. If the council signs on Smart Growth rezone of our city, we will be in the state's inventory and in essence become a homeless holding tank. Then once we reach 10,000 person mark, it will get worse exponentially. They will in essence be taking our land through eminent domain. Because Oregon is a sanctuary state and has decriminalized drugs and crimes in general, including that of sex offenders, we will be infested with homeless criminals and illegals that need housing. Her policies have created it, and she is bent on building Section 8 to house those that should be deported or jailed. If Smart Growth project is allowed to pass by the councilors, this Oak Ridge will become a holding tank for the homeless, drug addicts, sex offenders, and illegals from Eugene. We have no jobs here, so they won't be coming for work. Basically, in a nutshell, Kotek plans to invest rural America with Section 8 housing through our tax dollars. This would enable her to get rid of 20,000 homeless, not counting all the criminals that are on the streets and illegals by dispersing them into rural communities. This will affect our entire community, even High Prairie. It will destroy Oak Ridge as we know it. I think some transparency on the planners' part is in order, and some accountability on the homeless drug addicts is in order, as well as stricter laws and jail time, and perhaps we need to build more jails. Planning to increase our population by providing high density and medium density housing.
Ms. Lamb, pardon me, could you, Ms. Lamb?
With no accountability is a recipe. for
Ms. Lamb?
spend.
Okay.
Of course, it is great for the city because it increases the tax revenue, but at what expense? Please, once we accept the Smart Growth project, there is no turning back, and it's destroying every city that is entangled with it. Why would we purposely unleash this on the citizens? I hope the council will have the courage to reject this proposal from the planning commission to rezone our city. And I was also just found out about this February 28th. So it's not like I've had the chance to come to these meetings like my third one.
Thank you for your comments. Is there a comment online in opposition? Nothing heard. We'll come back to you. In the room, please come forward.
Okay, I did have a statement. I'm going to pick some pieces from that.
We could have your name.
I'm sorry, my name is Mary Woodrow. I live at 76718 Bugle Loop in Oak Ridge. This statement was more involved. But this pertains just to this one issue that you're working on today. I believe that the intention, the HNA intentionally misled population numbers, and I have an exhibit when more accurate data was available. There was more accurate data available with Portland State. They used an estimated census number, and then they had the accurate census number before they published their report. The needs expressed in the HNA are only valid because of intentional errors. The city website touts the availability and portability of housing in Oak Ridge, and I have an exhibit some of the website from the city. So maybe we need to update that. And that's been there since before we moved here. We moved here from Idaho to retire on purpose, and we read this and we thought, wow, excellent. The HNA is the foundation for the recommendations that you have before you now, and we'll see more in the future, more of in the future. As is shown by the attached exhibits, the HNA uses intentionally inaccurate information in order to justify changes in the zoning in Oak Ridge, which are neither required by statute nor the potential increase in population. It is my feeling that the city would find it difficult to defend any decisions were they to be appealed that are made based on the HNA, including any related to the current zoning project. I would urge a thorough review and verification of the so-called factual information presented in the HNA prior to making any decisions. Maybe these exhibits.
Thank you for your comments. Any comments in opposition online? Nothing heard in the room, sir?
Well, let's be a minute. You know, I don't have any, I didn't have a chance to do a prepared
Understand.
presentment or pass out exhibits. But anyway, I did see one of your,
You could give us your name and
one of your, what, huh?
you give us your name and your
Oh,
city.
William Haycock. I'm at 48386 or 384. First and Cherry Street, right there. And so I was looking through your pamphlets, and I saw a couple of things that caught my eye. That was kind of, because I'm not clear on where is the boundary regarding, you have middle use, or no, old or old district or old design or old historic design or whatever, and then you have the proposed boundaries for this, what we're talking about. Okay. And so when I read the pamphlet about what this all applies to, I can't find mine at all. Anyhow, so I don't have any opposition to letting other people hang out. I think it'd be a better neighborhood, really. I mean, really. I don't know. This is about, with me, it's not about tax or revenue. It's about you guys being able to create a transferable interest in property that was, pretty much already bought and paid for by innocent purchasers, maybe. And like building height or shape for parking lots and this kind of thing. And then I read the words highest and best use in this pamphlet anyway. And I could, if I could find the pamphlet, I could show you, but it smacks of eminent domain forethought. To me, like you create a property interest. And then some poor staff doesn't act on it, or doesn't register, doesn't file it or something, and then it's lost as abandoned property and somebody can snatch that up. In you know, an example, a scenic easement. Well, a public right, see, my property has trees on it, big ones. Big ones, right? And it's kind of it's a big blessing to me and the houses around me, right? I mean, pretty much from, depending on the time of the year, all the way, to the extreme part of the year. And so I think shade value is applied to a federal sectioning that comes from like the northwest. And so kind of the property interest or the interest comes down in a big V like this out of the northwest over what we're looking at here. And I understand that the shade is a benefit to my neighbors. I don't know what to do with that. So I've been looking into that, and so all of a sudden this come up. And so up to my questions like, oh, geez, who controls this as a utility, as a benefit? Can I control it as a benefit? Or should I, I'm an old retired guy, as public benefit for my trees, or put them in some legacy trust or something like that. Or take them down,
Yeah.
Which is something I don't want to.
Yeah, please try to bring it to a close. Your 3 minutes or.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I just have to, right now, I just have to, I request that the council, give me some time to present a halfway decent, coherent, present. And don't rush into things. I don't see any need to go from what it was to this high density thing, when what Kate Brown had done and proposed or whatever was just fine with me. Except for my view of my scenic easement from my trees.
Thank you
Those
for your
trees are
comments.
mine.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I'll go back to online. Are there any comments on opposition?
Yes, I'd like to.
I'm sorry, if you could identify yourself.
Yes, I am Dawn Kenyon. I'm from Oak Ridge, Oregon. And I just wanted to make a check on the council for the 3-minute time limit. It seems like some of the letters being read are longer than that, and yet other people are getting cut off. Just wanted the council to check in on that.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, in the room, any other comments in opposition? Online, any comments in opposition? Nothing heard, so we'll move on to statements in general. Are there any persons who wish to testify in general to this request? Please sign in if you haven't already. State your name and address. Any comments in general? Online or in the room? All right, nothing heard there. Does the city council have any further questions of the staff? Please.
I have a couple. I guess I've heard it stated a few times, eminent domain. I guess I don't see how that would apply to this. I don't understand.
No,
Can you explain that?
it doesn't apply to this. Eminent domain is where a community government body decides that a piece of property is in the best interest of the community to acquire, and they acquire through eminent domain, and they purchase it forcefully through eminent domain. There's absolutely nothing involved in eminent domain here. We have no desire to take anybody's property.
Please.
I also have heard, I believe in section 8 housing before. So I don't understand, you don't build section 8 housing, as far as I understand.
You being,
Well, like you don't develop property to be like, this is section 8 housing. I thought it was up to the owner to be like,
Correct.
I am willing to rent it as section 8 housing.
correct, because it is a voucher system.
Okay,
So those who are in need of assistance through Section 8, give vouchers that pay for their rent.
Okay.
Well, now, whether a builder decides to build for that purpose and intent, I can't say, but it's not necessarily intended. I mean, I guess I don't know how to best answer your question, because a builder could absolutely say, I'm gonna build a fourplex and they're all gonna be Section 8. They could absolutely do that from the get-go, but that would be the same requirements from land use and planning that is somebody building a standard or even high income fourplex. So from planning and zoning, those changes don't apply unless there's triggers, like they're going to guarantee that 60% AMI of the area of median income. There's triggers that apply in land use and zoning for those, but that's not Section 8.
Other comments or questions from council? A couple, Rick, one of the commenters mentioned the sort of the conflict between covenants and code and land use code. As the city attorney or anyone taking a look at that and knows what trumps what, or?
No, I haven't asked off the city attorney. Reason being is usually when I have conversation with our city attorney, and requests for land use attorneys, I don't get one. But the simple matter is ceasing ours are civil matter. They're not ours to regulate.
But if you had, there was a disparity between the two, could you enforce the land use?
And in fact, I can only enforce what's in our ordinances. And best case example is if somebody put an application on my desk to install a manufactured home in the Elk Meadows area, I am obligated to issue that permit. And if I don't, that would leave us open for lawsuits because we're not following our own ordinances.
And then it would be up to the homeowners association to enforce their own covenants.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I get it. Lastly, the planning commission made this unanimous decision on what date?
This was on the
18th. And the minutes have not yet been published to the website.
No, the minutes have not been published, which the fact that you guys have received it does not include all of the public comments.
Right.
I need to make sure that is pointed out.
So I'd like to sort of have a discussion with council on this. And my concern is that without those minutes, in the absence of those minutes, maybe we should consider continue with this hearing instead of actually closing it out and making a decision. Because number one, the citizens haven't had time to actually see those minutes or maybe not watch the video. It's only been 2 days. And we could, yep.
No, I'm sorry, this one came from February 18th meeting.
February 18th, but the minutes are not available.
Right.
Okay. So my concern is those minutes are not available. And if someone is not video enticed, then they don't know the results of that planning commission meeting. There's some comments that may have been missed. In addition, I agree, we're not in a great rush here, and there's no harm in continuing a hearing. And I would suggest if council is of a like mind that April 3rd, 2025 at 7 p.m. would be, which coincides with our next council meeting, would be a time to continue this public hearing if you'd like to do that. So I guess I'll ask, is there any feedback on that thought?
Yes.
Please.
I'm sorry, Aaron, did I cut you off?
No, go.
Is there any more planning commission meetings between now and then? Of any sort, work sessions or?
We're having a work session on Monday and then, yes, one on Monday.
Okay. Will the minutes, you think, be available for both or all 3 meetings? I guess would be or all the meetings that don't have minutes yet? Will they all be ready by?
I will do my best.
Okay.
Absolutely. The reason I have to say that is, I'm going back into mapping processes and they took an awful lot of time to do.
You don't need sleep, so.
You don't realize how close that statement is to real life.
Councilor Davis, do you have a question?
No, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I agree.
So if you look, I think there's a proposed or recommended motion for continuance. if you look and, I guess what I'll do is ask for a motion to provide that continuance.
Can I make a motion?
Please.
Shot here. I'm gonna make a motion to continue this meeting to April 3rd,
At 7.
7.
Okay, motion was made by Counselor Tarman. Is there a second on that
I'll
motion?
second that.
Seconded by Counselor Brewer. Any discussion on that motion? Questions of staff about how that's going to work? Please.
Can I ask why it's so important for them? I mean, because at this point, what we're voting on is not nearly what they're already discussing. I know they're already discussing about the work sessions for the maps. We're just getting the process going.
Rick? Yeah.
So my fear is because you guys, you don't have all the public comment in front of you. Unless you watch the video.
I watched all the movies.
Unless everybody watched all the
I did.
videos. My fear is, procedural errors.
Okay, I just wanted to know what the thinking was. I'm not against it. I just,
Procedural errors. And then again, the packet that I sent you guys out, ideally, there should have been more time between it hitting our website and this meeting. And again, procedural errors. is what I'm afraid of.
just wanted to know the reason.
You know, I'm primarily concerned with the citizens' ability to be able to see all that stuff too, because they deserve as much time as they need to absorb that within a reason, of course. All right, any further questions?
Second.
That was Counselor Brewer, yeah. Did you get the motion, Rick?
Motion, Council Charlie made a motion to continue this public hearing to April 3rd at 7 o'clock.
All right, Jackie, can you call for the vote, please?
Counselor Davis,
Aye.
Counselor Brewer,
Aye.
Counselor Scott,
Aye.
Counselor Tarman,
Aye.
Counselor Carter,
Aye.
Counselor
Aye.
Mayor Ketchum.
Aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. We'll look at this again on April 3rd.
That will have. I will have the rest of the public comment because
You have James get the whip out. All right, now we're going to move on to order of procedure for request number 2, public hearing. And that's 25 CP 001 Part 1 request 2 for the Oak Ridge City Council to amend the City of Oak Ridge Comprehensive Map Plan. And first is again the call for abstentions. Does any member of the City Council wish to declare an ex parte contact or feel they may have a conflict of interest, bias, or other reason to be disqualified from participation in this hearing? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to challenge the councilor's qualifications to participate in this hearing?
Well, John.
Yeah, please come forward.
For conflict of interest, on pretty much the whole city of Oak Ridge. And I mean, you guys, that, you know, I'm involved in this investigation about my my house title and what's occurred with it at the hands of one of your public-private partnerships with a couple outfits, Oregon S or OH, what is it? The Oregon Community Housing Services is one of your partners in some respects, and in a lot of respects, and I think it has to do with this too. And so these are the same people that I'm looking at as outright frauds and what they've done with my house title and in apparent conjunction with the city here. You know, I didn't sign up with those people, you know, really for this, you know, I get mortgaged on this property descriptor, which is my property because I bought it as part of my property. And I get delivered back this a release for a different property descriptor. And I know there's been some changes that have occurred on the legislative side that lets that kind of thing happen. But it's still crooked. It's still crooked. And
What was the organization you mentioned?
Excuse me,
The organization you mentioned that we, the partner,
Oregon, Community Housing Services or how, yeah, Community Housing Services.
do we have,
Yeah,
do we have any partnership with them at all, Rick?
are you sure? Are you sure? Okay, okay, well,
I have never worked with them.
well, what they are is, okay, I got behind on my taxes, my property taxes, because I was going through this thing. Because I'm 65 and disabled now, and so I needed some help to cover those taxes. And so there's an outfit in Springfield that the tax lady, the tax lady, Nancy Ray, I think, sent me a thing saying, here, go talk to these guys. So she's soliciting to get this application in before my 3-year delinquency thing was up and the thing could go into foreclosure somehow. Okay, and there was some problems with all that I got rushed and completely blindsided by a different application from her. And I've got all this. I mean, it's a big thing.
So back to the matter at hand, how does that create a conflict of interest for the city council?
Because in the meantime, my property got acquired by members of, well, a couple of different outfits, one here in town, and I don't know if it's through a family relation, and like you said, you didn't want, person, so I don't want to do that, but I will say that one of the members of a parent corporation that seized control of my old property, my old address. Okay, now they're part of this corporation and with the local landowner and some other partners, and I can see this coming on in respect to this legislation and these changes, and that's cool with me. But according to what I see, it gives them access to highest and best use type standards for for whatever they need. And I know that one of the needs for affordable housing is for so many acres or whatever, you're supposed to have so much of a canopy. Trees, okay, so I'm looking at, it's not my trees they're after, maybe it's my trees they're claiming, or maybe it's this shade that they're claiming that, you all know that you are gonna have in order to establish a bigger chunk for higher density housing with the feds, with the federal money, okay? And so that's part of that thing. And
So is there a counselor that would benefit from the outcome of whatever happens here?
Oh, is there a counselor? Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all.
Well, that's what I'm asking for. This was a point to raise if you.
Well, maybe because do you work for Firewise? Yeah.
I work for the.
Okay, well, see, I had an appointment with you last Friday. I had to cancel it. I had one today too. But they said you weren't available anyway. To come and look at these trees. And I went, well, because I got to be careful about the entities in this environment, in this political thing,
So
about who I let on my property and expect my.
how would Councilor Carter benefit from what's?
Well, it might benefit because I'm trying to decide what to do with this property. I'm just well, and this job here, I think it's a conflict of interest, not on a commercial end, but just as a a way to smooth things over and to blur the lines between public and private information, because that's what I'm talking about. My information was stolen because of a $3,500 tax bill, and there's just so much legislation coming down now with stormwater, with fire map, with this thing, whatever this is. All of it appears rushed through to me, and I'm slow to it. I should have been on top of it.
Well, now you have time because we're continuing this hearing.
Okay.
So you'll
I'd
be able to come back on April 3rd and make a comment that you had more time to.
Yeah, I would. And there was some other.
So Rick.
But basically, I've got no problem with having more neighbors.
Okay.
And is plan 2 or plan 2, whatever we're doing, the second part of this time, does that have to do with the bike lane?
No.
And all that?
No.
Okay, and then, all right, well, then I'm done. I'm just stating that.
So
a conflict of interest isn't a technical, you know, a corruption charge or something like that. It's just, it has to do with my property and who controls those numbers, because I went to this. I saw in this man's office the other day, because I came down, I had some concern. I believe so.
He doesn't have an office here. Was it here?
Oh, yeah, it was you. I'm sorry. Maybe I saw you here. But anyway, it was you. And you showed me this map and it didn't have the information that I anticipated to be there. I went, well, the other one does. And that was the, you know, for citizens, I guess, or you go to the Lane County site. And if you went to their site where you can actually see the documents and actually see the old tax statements and who was claiming ownership, because they say right there, owner. And then they say, you know, or taxpayer, then they have owners. And so there's definitely a list of record, you know, and a claim of in that respect. And so I went there today just so I knew that I wasn't seeing things and to see what it said today, because I've been watching these changes occur in the public record. The more and more I look into them. And today, of course, they had absolutely, they had the taxpayer, they had all the owners, but they had listed no address at all.
So
At all, or any indicator. But if you go to the view owners site on that official Lane County site, you see they're still claiming my old address. I have the receipts for paying the taxes on that address and whatever property right that address gave me as part of a parcel.
So, sir, to get on with the matter at hand, you don't have an issue with any single counselor having a conflict of interest. It's just a
No.
general. Okay, so we're going to move on. We're going to move on, and you.
Now I had to cancel my firewise appointment, and I wanted that.
So we're going to move on and ask you to sit down, and you'll be able to come back on the 3rd.
But
Thank you. All right.
Mayor?
someone
Mayor?
trying to- Who's this?
Hi, Mayor. This is Dawn Kenyon, City of Oak Ridge. I had something I wanted to say about ex parte.
This isn't a time for public comment. Do you have a challenge to, do you detect a conflict of interest?
Yes, I wanted to ask about ex parte contact. Isn't it true that if a counselor attends or watches the planning commission meeting that they need to declare ex parte contact?
Only if they have information that the rest of the body does not.
That all that information is open to every counselor, so there will be no ex parte requirement.
It's because I attend.
All right.
Thank you.
So.
Please.
Is there anything that you think you learned by attending that meeting is not being shared with the rest of the council?
Not at all.
Okay, and if that were the case, ex parte contact is a simple fix. Let's assume, let's say you did, let's say that, which is hypothetical, I think this is a good opportunity. Hypothetically, I did not put something in a staff report that you felt was very important. Your comment could be like, I have ex parte contact. I learned at the planning commission meeting, this, and this. I'm sharing it with the rest of you. That solves ex parte contact if anybody's curious. It's that simple to fix. It's just having more knowledge than anybody else sitting in the dais.
Okay. So now we'll move on to item 2, and that's to open the public hearing. The public hearing conducted by the Oak Ridge City Council is now open on March 20th, 2025 at 8:34 p.m. in the Oak Ridge City Hall. This hearing is conducted as a legislative hearing in accordance with the City of Oak Ridge Ordinance 874, Article 32, Section 3205, City Council legislation. The City Council may do any of the following: require the proponent to identify the provisions of the comprehensive plan that govern the decision and prepare findings describing how the proposal complies or fails to comply with these plan provisions. 2, review the nature of the proposed and describe whether the proposed warrants processing as a legislative matter. 3, prepare a recommendation and make findings in support of such recommendations. This hearing is on an amendment to the City of Oak Ridge Comprehensive Plan to amend text. I think that's correct, is it? One moment, please. I think it's an error. It's B. The last paragraph in B, we're proposing to modify the comprehensive plan map, are we not? Okay. This hearing is on an amendment to the City of Oak Ridge Comprehensive Plan to amend the comprehensive plan map. The city council at this public hearing may approve, modify, or deny the request or continue the meeting to a later date. A copy of this minutes and of this hearing will be available in the city offices along with the rules and procedures I'm describing as part of this file. Procedure, the public hearing is your only opportunity to submit factual information or raise issues concerning the request based on the applicable criteria listed. Fail to raise an issue at this hearing in person or by letter, or failure to provide sufficient specificity as to the criteria in order to afford the decision maker an opportunity to respond to an issue precludes the appeal to the State of Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. If the decision is appealed, only those issues raised by testimony or letter at the original hearing may be raised in any local or state appeal of the initial decision. An issue that may be the basis for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised no later than the close of record at or following the final evidentiary hearing on this application. Such issues shall be raised with and accompanied by statements of evidence sufficient to afford this body an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Then those individuals wishing to register evidence or comments can testify. During the hearing, the city councilors may ask questions of staff members or others who provided testimony. When the need for public discussion ends, the city council closes the public hearing for its deliberation. No public testimony is permitted during that time unless the city council reopens the public hearing. If you have documents, maps, letters that you wish to have considered by the Planning Commission, they must be formally placed in the record of the proceeding. To do that before or after you speak, please hand the material to the staff. Those that will be testifying must provide their name and full mailing address if they wish to receive a notice of decision, be notified of a continuance, appeal, or other action on the application. So now, item 4 is the staff report. We're ready for the report, Rick.
I wish the report was ready for you. As mentioned before, planning commission has gone back into work session phases. Meaning I do not have a report ready, and I won't until we come out of work session and go back into our next planning commission public hearing, which is scheduled for the regular hearing time on April 15th. After April 15th is when I will be able to, assuming that on April 15th, they have an answer, they have a proposal, that's when I can start working on and finalizing your guys' staff report. So unfortunately, best case scenario, and even this is a time crunch. Best case I could have is May 1st for a staff report for you all. And even then, if I have it on May 1st and I have it in the public view for 2 weeks, that only gives me 2 days after the meeting to complete the staff report. I would feel much safer if I said that I can have a staff report by May 15th. That gives time for it to be on the public, on the city website for 2 weeks, giving time for the public to view.
Okay, well, given that information, the public has had no map to actually comment upon because it's under revision. So I would suggest the same action that just happened in the last request, and that's continue this hearing. And I would recommend a date, given his comments, of May 15th, 2025, which coincides with a city council meeting at 7 and make the hearing at 7 p.m. I'd like to ask if there's any thoughts from council on that proposal. All right, so I'm looking for a motion.
I'll motion.
Okay.
I move we continue this public hearing to May 15th at 7 p.m.
So here's a second. All right, the motion was made by Counselor Davis, seconded by Counselor Coker. Any discussion or questions of staff on this? All right, hearing none. The motion was to continue the hearing to May 15th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Jackie, would you call for a vote, please? Aye.
Aye.
Counselor Davis.
Aye.
Counselor Drummond,
I,
Counselor Rose,
Aye.
Counselor Scott,
Hi.
Counselor Carter.
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Rick, what's the proper, are we adjourning or what are we doing? So, so everyone knows, both of the public hearings are still open, which means comment is still going to be made available at those times that were provided, and they can still do written.
Yes, written comment is still being accepted, for both, for all three public hearings that are running at the moment. That's the one for planning commission to,
The two that are here.
for mapping.
Yep.
The one for the R2, R3, and then a second one for mapping for you guys.
All right. Any other questions, Ms. Lamb?
Be about meeting April 3rd at 7 p.m. or
For request number 1. Yes. All right, there's no others, counselors, we all happy? All right, meeting adjourned at 8:41.
We're gonna get walk out.
What?
Not adjourned. No.
Meeting is not adjourned at 8:41.
yeah, that's like.
Yeah.